know that some in our audience know the finer points of hockey.
The Chris Johnston Show.
We are your friends.
The biggest stories, bringing you inside the game.
What did you hear?
The Chris Johnston Show. Powered by Sports Interaction, Canada's sportsbook.
What is going on?
Here's Chris with your host, Julian McKenzie.
Part of the game.
It's been 31 years since we had a Battle of Alberta. And of course, we have one of the best playoff games we've ever seen. Like 9-6, the goals, the chirps, the fans going off. Like I wake up early. I know you wake up early too. It was worth staying up late to watch that game.
Can I make a confession?
Of course you can.
I went to bed when it was 5-1.
Oh, you did? Oh, wow. Wow. I don't blame you.
I got to wake up. We got the pod. I got, my work for North Star Bets to do today. I was just thinking, like, I'm going to get a head start on tomorrow. This game is all but done. What could I possibly miss by going to bed right now?
Oh, that's the worst. That's the worst. That's okay.
I watched the highlights, but it's just not the same because obviously the joy of a game like that is thinking one team's totally out and then seeing it get back to 6-6 early in the third period. I mean, had I started to see the comeback, I wouldn't have went to bed, but I didn't. I thought Jacob Markstrom, the Flames got this in the bag. They're at home. My buddy James Watt, shout out Coburg, one of my OGs, was at the game. He was texting me. He's like, "It's crazy here. Everyone's having fun." Like it felt like it was all going Calgary's way. And so I went to bed early, and that was my mistake.
Well, look, okay, we're both working men, but you are a working man. You do have a column in North Star Bets, which we will get to, along with other stuff that you might not have gotten to during your appearance on the SDP on Wednesday. I watched, very entertaining. But that comeback, I was going to go to bed early too. I was like, okay, the Flames have this in the bag. This is ridiculous. I mean, Mike Smith getting pulled, Mikko Koskinen going in, this game should be over. But when you have Connor McDavid on your team and he's able to do stuff like that, he had a 4-point night. You can never feel as if a game is completely out of it, especially when you have a healthy Connor McDavid.
Fair. We almost need to install an alarm system in my house where if something like this happens, you could just press it from Montreal and wake me up and I'll be like, oh man, what am I doing? Although you could probably use that for the wrong purposes to mess with me. So maybe that's not such a good idea. But I will say this, I'm very much when I go to a sporting event, I never leave early. I am very much in, if you go there, you're there to watch and you never know what could happen. I even think back, I don't know why this thought jumps in my mind, but there's in the bubble, there was that one Leafs Blue Jackets game where the Leafs scored 3 goals to tie it.
I remember.
And it was with all of them with the goalie pulled. I think it was in the last 2 minutes. Even in a playoff game, people would have left. I was at that Boston Leafs 2013 game where it was 4-1. 3,000 or 4,000 people left the rink that night and never saw the Bruins come back on their overtime win live. And so for those reasons, I wouldn't leave early had I been at that game at the Saddle Dome. Although maybe if I had my typical Saddle Dome experience, maybe I might have been forced to leave early. The real ones know what that's about. But
the real ones know.
but in this case, when you're just sitting at home, it just felt like a good opportunity to get an extra hour's sleep.
Oh, look, I think if you pay the money to go to a playoff game, what's the point of leaving? You might as well just take in the entire experience, even if it's going bad. Because, again, you never know what could happen in these games. Plus, it's just fun to just be there for the entire game. That's how I think a lot of people feel like I would have felt last night, except they're at the game. They're like, oh, we can get out before the traffic's crazy. We can get home a little earlier. Maybe tomorrow will be better. I get how you feel that way, but I feel like if you've already made the effort to acquire tickets, to physically go to the arena, to pay $22 for a beer or whatever it is, and sit in the seats, you might as well stay there to the end just in case you see something you would never expect to see happen. Whereas my level of commitment wasn't that high. I clicked a few buttons on a remote and was watching the game and texted with my buddy James. And that was about the extent of my, what I had to do to have that entertainment. And so I think it's easier to pull the chute when you haven't put as much in as someone who actually went to the game. Yeah, but seriously, for people who get to cover that series, I know Pierre LeBrun has made his way down to Alberta to cover it. I'm thinking of my man Avery Lewis McDougall, Salim Valji, your fellow
Even
colleague
at TSN. I saw.
Man, Kelly Rudy's there too. Haley Salvian, Daniel Nugent-Bowman. This is the series to cover. I know I'm hyped for the Florida series, but the Battle of Alberta already off one game is unlike anything we've seen in these playoffs so far. And it's going to get really fun. I can't imagine how Daryl Sutter must be feeling, even after a 9-6 win. Like,
he had his dry sense of humor intact. That's what I liked. I saw the quote about, oh, we missed the convert. And, I instructed the players to score 7 to 10 goals to win the game because we thought they'd score 5 to 8. I mean, I love a good Daryl Sutter line. I mean, I don't know if you remember this way back in the day when Daryl coached the Kings. John Rosen was the LA Kings insider at the time. And he would transcribe all of Daryl's, like, his back and forth with the media and put it out there, just a transcript of it. And if I ever saw that flip by when I was on Twitter, I'd always click it and read it. Like, I didn't care what was going on with the Kings at that moment, but I just knew there would always just be priceless back and forths and strange references. And I have not figured out Daryl Sutter, but I appreciate the way he approaches the media. I find it actually pretty hilarious.
So going back to the fans for a second here, if you're at that game and you're enjoying yourself and you're watching the Battle of Alberta unfold, and all of a sudden Brady Tkachuk of the Ottawa Senators comes towards you and starts giving you high fives, and you notice the 2 beers in his back pockets, how are you reacting?
Oh, I'd love it. Like,
yeah.
I have to be honest here. I don't understand. I don't know. Why is anybody on the other side of this? Like, Brady Tkachuk hasn't had a game to play for the Ottawa Senators in 3 weeks. He's allowed to go to other hockey games. Like, I actually know this happens every playoffs. I guarantee you he was not the only other current NHLer in the building. Now, he was the only one wearing kind of a Matthew Tkachuk red t-shirt and pounding beers openly and whatever. Like, a lot of guys maybe have cut a lower profile in that situation. But, like, players know each, they've got buddies on the teams. They're just back home and, starting their off season, maybe not back into workout mode yet. Like, it's completely normal to go and enjoy a game in the stands as a current NHL player. I see no issue with it. The fact that it's his brother, like, how could anybody tell you wouldn't support your brother? You don't think Matthew Tkachuk, situations reversed, wouldn't be in Ottawa watching that game? Like, I just think it's silly that someone would suggest otherwise. Like, you're supposed to be a robot with only allegiance to one thing, and that's the crest on the front of the jersey, and you can have no life or no other thoughts or no, like, it's insane. Like, there's not even a counterpoint here. It's crazy to say that he shouldn't be cheering for his brother, or even if he's cheering for the Flames, even if he's the world's biggest Flames fan. I don't see that as an issue. Like, I don't think he's going to throw a game against the Flames next year.
No. The wild thing about this topic, because I'm with you, I think it's cool to see that he's supporting his brother and his family's all there watching the games. And, like, I put that out there, and like 99% of the comments I got were all thinking the same thing. Like, this is like a great show of support from the family. He's supporting his brother. I've only really seen like one person, I'm not going to like mention their name, but like only seen one person kind of disagree with it. And even them, they said like, it's just weird. They didn't like full on condemn it. Like, it's a really cool thing to see.
Well, what's weird is, it's not all that common that you have brothers in the NHL. Like, I know we can all think of a number of circumstances, but it's not like every set of brothers plays in the league. And, in this case, they both play for Canadian teams. They're both really good players, sort of prominent players in their markets. And so it gets a little more attention. But as I say, I don't find this strange at all. And, I told the story, I think the last pod, like, I know this one jumps in my mind. James Van Riemsdyk was on the ice when the Blackhawks won, and his brother Trevor in 2015 won the Stanley Cup. And like, now he wasn't wearing a jersey and running around with a bunch of beer, but that's maybe more of a personality difference than he was keeping a bit lower profile. But I don't see any issue with this. Look, Brady Tkachuk just signed a long-term deal in Ottawa. He's the team captain. I doubt any of his teammates are thinking like, oh, he doesn't love us anymore, or he's divided loyalties. I think what he's showing is that he actually is a tremendously loyal guy. He's loyal to the Senators when he's playing hockey for them. And when it's the off season, he's loyal to his family. I see to me, it's not even, I don't see the other side to this. Like, this is like, it's great that he loves sports. It's great that he loves hockey enough that he bothers to go to a game. It's great that he loves his brother and his family enough that he supports them. And we've all known the Tkachuks to some degree, if you've been watching them, like, they're very fun-loving guys. They're a great family. Keith Tkachuk's one of the legends of the sport. I think it's a great thing. Like, both brothers too, like, they go, I know their sister plays at college, I think, field hockey. And like, if you've watched their Instagram and stuff, like, they go to her games and like cheer for her and whoop it up. So I just think it's a great sign of solidarity for their family, and I hope he continues. Honestly, I hope that the haters aren't going to take over on this one.
Like one hater too. Like literally, like I've never seen hockey Twitter so in favor of one thing happening as much as I've seen this. This is like impressive in its own, that it is not as much of a fight as it is. Like, right. It's just like, that's what I think is really impressive.
My brother-in-law is a season ticket holder of the Senators, and a long suffering, I'll say at this point, but diehard. He DM'd me this morning. He's like, what a beauty he is. And it was just, one of the videos of Brady that was going around. Like, I don't know. That's from someone who pays a lot of money or has paid over his time a lot of money to support the team. Like, he doesn't see a problem with it. I mean, I don't see an issue here at all.
What about if it was like, I tried to make the point to Canadiens fans that, like, what if like Nick Suzuki was supporting his brother Ryan, who's in the Carolina Hurricanes organization? And with those two fan bases, I'm not sure if you're as familiar, but those two seem to go back and forth online just because something about an offer sheet and Jesperi Kotkaniemi, you may or may not remember that. But yeah, there seems to be a lot of online animosity. And I think some people were trying to suggest to me that maybe that wouldn't work as well. But like, I think that's just ridiculous. Like, I think it would, like, Nick Suzuki wouldn't care. And I like the idea that players are able to go support their siblings if they're around the league, even if there might be like a weird, like, rivalry thing going on. Like, you have it right. Be a human, support your family if they're there, have feelings. I like the way you're looking at it.
I don't care if it was some connection of Boston, Montreal, whatever, Toronto, Montreal, like whatever we deem these fierce rivalries. Like, we're all mostly luckily blessed enough to have families. Like, I think it's sort of like family above all else in this sense. Like what, I mean, let's face it. What are sports teams? I know we all, if you're a fan of one, put a lot of emotion into it, but it's laundry, man. Like, it's a logo on the front of a sweater. Like, it's not, I think blood trumps that in my mind. And so whether it's Nick Suzuki and his brother or whatever has gone on between like GM's past of those like, I think that supporting your family is a pretty noble thing. And like, I actually like seeing it from Brady. I think it's cool. So I'm on the other side. Like, not only do I think it's not a problem, I think it's actually awesome that he's been there and been that supportive, high-fiving fans, drinking beers. Like, how old is he? 21, 22? Live your life, man. Enjoy it. Like, these guys work hard. He's going to spend his whole summer probably with Matthew, working out, getting in shape, being ready when it comes time for camp. These guys have tremendously demanding lives and jobs. This is the one time a year, if your team is out of the playoffs, you can kind of relax a little bit. He could be in like Cabo right now, but he's choosing to go to Calgary to be at these games. Like, I think it's great. And that's not a shot at Calgary. I actually vacation in Calgary usually once a year, but I'm just saying that, like, he could be doing anything and he's supporting his family. I think that's really cool.
And he just so happens to be supporting his brother just as he's playing what could prove to be the series of the postseason so far. Again, game one, nothing short of entertainment value.
Yeah, I don't think we're going to see another game like that, though.
But still.
I don't mean just 9-6. Like, it was just a strange, like, there's almost like if you were covering that series in a day-to-day manner, and I know that we're not doing that on the pod, like, there's almost nothing to take out of that game that you would say, hey, this is a theme to hit on here. Like, Jacob Markstrom's one of the best goalies in the league. He couldn't stop a beach ball in that game. Like, that's the reason there's a comeback, right? Connor McDavid had some wonderful individual plays, but, Calgary really overwhelmed them. And it just was such a strange game from top to bottom. It's not going to be I don't think anything that happens there is going to decide the series, other than the fact that Calgary's one win closer to pushing the Oilers into their summer. And so that's the benefit to them. But that's just one of those ones that, like, you burn the tape or whatever if you're the coach. I actually got a chuckle seeing Curtis McElhinney, the former NHL goalie, said, like, prayers for the goalie coaches, like, having to break that one down. Like, it literally pucks just going through guys at both ends. Like, even that very first goal on Mike Smith, back when I was still awake, I was like, what is this? Elias Lindholm shot. It wasn't a great night for the goalies. Tons of defensive turnovers I could see on the big goals for Calgary at the end of the game after it got back to 6-6. And the Flames scored 13 goals in a 7-game series, win over Dallas, and they get 9 the next, start the next round. I mean, what a What a wild time. I think this has been a cool year in the league, though. Like, we've hit on this trend. Like, I like that these games are coming in out of nowhere. A 9-6 game. We had a 10-7 game during the regular season. Like, it's fun. If you're in the building, like, I haven't reconnected with my buddy James who was at the game. I bet you'll remember that game the rest of your life, just because you don't go to the arena expecting to see 15 goals.
Absolutely. Speaking of goals, I figure it could be a topic of discussion when we bring on David Bastel from Sports Interaction. As always, if you're playing Sports Interaction, 19 plus and above, we ask that you play responsibly, and there is a link to responsible gaming strategies in the description of this show. Welcome to You Can Bet That with David Bastel. Remember to hit up sportsinteraction.com/SDPN for all of your gaming needs. David, I wanted to look at some over-unders for goals for each of the remaining playoff series. And I have to admit, I was a bit inspired by the goal bonanza that we got in Calgary, Edmonton in game one of what looks to be a scintillating Battle of Alberta series. What can you tell us about that?
Yeah, it's funny. I kind of reminded you of like 80s hockey or 90s hockey where everybody seemed to go over the 10 mark and they did it quite fast. You know what's funny? So you and I were talking this morning and I still had to confirm this at Sports Interaction. That goal total has not changed. It's still 6.5. I'm going to be really curious, Julian, if that hits a 7, because we did see a pair of 7s that would come out every once in a while during a Saturday when there was like a Toronto, Washington, or some high-powered offensive teams, you know what I mean? And you go down the list, Colorado's and Florida's are in that conversation, but we have not seen a 7 in the postseason. Could we see it here in game number 2? You never know.
You need to know if Markstrom gets to wear his glove or not for the next game.
Yeah, that's actually true too. Just to be clear, it's so for the game, not the period, right? Not for the first period or anything like that. Exactly,
for the entire game. And you know what? Publicly, when the public sees 15 goals in game number 1, the majority of people, just your Joe Public guys, right? Guys like us that bet occasionally and have some fun once in a while, will sit there and go, of course the next game's going to go over. And when the public does that, just like a stock exchange, that number could go up as well.
Okay. What about a series that has not seen a lot of goals so far? The Carolina Hurricanes and the New York Rangers.
Yeah, funny you say that. That number is at 5.5. Now, as rare as a 7 is, a 5.5 is the equivalent for the unders right now. And are we going to see 6 goals? Because if we see 6 goals, that is an easy over. I don't know, Chris. Yesterday we saw 1 goal for the first 50 minutes of the game, and then all of a sudden it was pushed to overtime. So it was an easy under. Do we see under 5.5 in game number 2 between these two defensive style teams, or at least it looks like through game 1?
Well, I recall you telling us that the Pittsburgh and Rangers series was one of the ones that was consistently hitting the over. So, it's hard to know where it's going with Shesterkin and the way it's gone there. But
yep.
This has been a weird playoffs. I mean, it seems like to me the over has been a pretty good bet across the board. And so, I doubt you're going to see the Hurricanes be as timid offensively, put it that way, as they were in game 1.
Okay, what about Tampa Bay and Florida?
Yeah, Tampa Bay, Florida. That's a 6.5. We were probably going to see 6.5 throughout this entire series. If I had to bet on the 7-game series, and kind of like what CJ just said there, I think if you blindly bet overs in this situation, I think you're winning at the end of it, just because you have to think that these guys are going to start to turn it up a little bit. There's a little bit of a feeling out process in that first game between, new teams that are facing each other for the first time in a bit, with all due respect to the Flames and the Oilers in their game number 1, but maybe we get turned up in game number 2 and we hit that over. But that will be an interesting series. Surprisingly, in that series too, right now, Tampa Bay, the favorites to win it just because of that game 1 win.
Okay. Last one, Colorado and St. Louis.
Yeah, that's still a 6.5. That's a pretty straight number right now. And I'm kind of curious what those under bettors look like, because Jordan Binnington, even in game 1, looked tremendous. We know what he did to the Minnesota Wild when the Blues, fixed that fantastic 3 straight wins, and Binnington's kind of showing signs of Stanley Cup Jordan Binnington. So if that continues, do we continue to see unders there, or is that something that is almost the polar opposite of what we see in the Flames and the Oilers.
Okay. It looks like we got some good odds for each of these 4 series. David, thank you as always for joining us for You Can Bet That. And don't forget to check out sportsinteraction.com/SDPN for all the best odds before game, in game, and the best props. Again, sportsinteraction.com/SDPN. David, thank you.
Thanks, fellas.
Okay, let's talk about the Toronto Maple Leafs. As if we don't do that enough on this show. How was it on the SDP yesterday?
We started slow with the Leafs in the show, but we've been pretty hard Leafs the back half of the season, if we're being honest. It was awesome. Going over to Adam's house, checking out the studio again. Like everything was what you'd expect. Adam's drinking a bubbly. Steve's like all over the place. Like he couldn't figure out what was going on. And then Jesse's just like locking shit down, like getting the camera set up calmly, just like working around the room, wearing his Bunch of Jerks t-shirt. But it was a good time. It's so funny that's become like this thing where I always go when the season ends, kind of by accident, like all good things, I guess. I did it once and it kind of blew up, and the fans have enjoyed having it back. And it's a hard show to do because, let's face it, everybody wants answers. When a team is lost in the playoffs, it's 48, 72 hours later, everyone wants to know what's going to happen next. And obviously there's some idea, you get a few breadcrumbs dropped at things like the season ending media availability. But the truth is as we're talking right now, I'm sure the Leafs management and coaching staff is in various meetings and trying to plot their own course forward. So there's not always great answers to be gleaned yet. We did the staying or going game where I think I accidentally traded half the team. Like I just sort of went off the thing. So I'm sure my batting average won't be good when we look back on that one in September, but it's a lot of fun being with those guys. And I love the passion of the people that love the SDP. And obviously those are the same people that have come over and embraced our show too. So I want to give those people the best I got when it comes to the topic they're interested in.
Absolutely. Also, when Steve asked if I was staying or going, I really appreciate that you did not hesitate when you said staying.
Wow. Come on. This show, I don't know. This show might be called the Chris Johnston Show, but I don't know where it would be without Julian. So if you go, the whole ship goes down, I think.
That's way too kind. But anyway, I know you kind of went in on a lot on that show, and I understand that there are people who maybe don't necessarily watch the SDP, but they watch us. But it's not like we didn't talk about what the Leafs could or maybe won't do on our last episode. So I don't want it to be too much of a rehash of those 2 episodes. But there are essentially 2 themes I kind of want to pick your brain about. And I want to start with the brain trust. So Sheldon Keefe, Kyle Dubas, and maybe you can include Brendan Shanahan in there. I'm just going to ask you straight up. Is it the right move to just have Keefe and Dubas back for next year?
I would definitely feel strongly that Kyle Dubas is the right GM to keep leading the team. You look at any team that's had success, and I get that this is where everything gets murky with the Leafs. Some people are worried about their 55-year drought without a cup, which, I'm not saying it's a fact, but like it has really nothing to do with the current day team.
Did you say 55 years?
Without a Stanley Cup win, yeah.
That is older than you.
Dude, it's older than it's older than like people that are like a half generation or 2 older than me. Like it's like I wasn't
even just making a joke about your age.
I know. Well, you like to do that. So some people are worried about 55 years, which has nothing to do with this team. Some people are worried about 18 years of not winning a playoff series, which again, it's a fact. I'm not saying we shouldn't repeat it, but it's not like Kyle Dubas or Austin Matthews or even Morgan Riley can answer for 18 years. Some people are even still worried, and this is getting more fair, about the 6 years of the current group where they've lost a playoff round without winning one. But, Kyle Dubas has been the GM now for 4 years, and that's and like that the actual guy in the seat making the decisions. And I just think, and I understand where people are going to want to attack this vector. It's hard to say that the team hasn't gotten better under his watch, that he hasn't managed a very difficult cap situation well. That he hasn't still put them in a position every year to be a little bit better and have a better chance to win. And so I just think it takes time with a GM. If you're changing GMs every 3 years, like you never get to see a cycle of a program come through. I mean, I think the next thing you want to see, if you're a Leafs fan or in ownership, I think you want to see a few more players graduate through the system. Obviously the Leafs haven't been a team since they've assembled this core where they've been picking that high in the draft. But I think you want to see a few guys come up and play for the team and make a difference. Play on an entry level contract, which makes the cap situation a little bit more manageable. And so that that takes time. Like Dubas has only managed 4 drafts, right? So that's a fine move to me. I think that there's at least a conversation to be had about Sheldon Keefe, if only because, let's face it, coaches really rather unfairly, frankly, get tossed aside all the time. This guy's regular season record is off the charts. I don't have the numbers, but I know he was the fastest to win 100 regular season games in Leafs history. The team's winning percentage is bonkers with him in the regular season. And so I think he's a good coach, but there is at least the argument to me that if you got to shock the system, that's one area you could change. And you have guys like Barry Trotz out there, maybe Peter DeBoer. I could at least listen to that argument. It was pretty clear though. Kyle Dubas was asked directly about that and basically said that's not happening for him. And so as long as he's making the decisions, that's not going down. So I don't have as much problem with this as maybe some people might. There's naturally going to be changes to the roster. I mean, that's true of every team. I think there'll be a fair number when all is said and done here, like somewhere 6 to 7 players that were playing in Game 7 probably won't be back. And so let's see how he manages that. I think it's basically, this is how I view the Leafs, Julian. Mm-hmm. They're so far down this path. I don't think they can completely reverse course. Like that would be silly. So I think you just keep doubling down on the bet. And if it doesn't pay off, I mean, you're going to have to do something dramatic at that point. But, it's not as though they can start fresh at this stage. I think that there's still a big summer for Kyle Dubas. I know this is this sort of narrative that this is like his Kawhi moment. He might trade like DeMar DeRozan for Kawhi, like some version of that. I think it's a convenient, tidy narrative. I'm not sure it mirrors reality, but I do think that you'll see him be at least mildly bold this offseason. And so, yes, I think it makes sense to keep them because I don't know how if you start firing everybody, like what is a new GM going to do at this point? Like the new GM is going to want to trade some guys for assets and take his time. It's like, well, they don't have time. Like that's one thing they don't have. Like if they don't sign these players to extensions, like they're down to 2 to 3 years with this core to try to win. And so until you can get those players' names on a contract extension, you're kind of all in for next season. And I think it therefore makes sense to stick with the guys who know what have been going on. And just because you bring a coach back to start a season, we saw a lot of coaches thrown overboard midseason. So if things aren't going well, I think there's still an opportunity to make a change there if needed.
Well, I'll offer a counterpoint with regards to having like a new GM, for example. Even if you have a new GM, maybe it's entirely possible that new person might not want to completely overhaul the core. And we've seen it happen before where a new guy will come in and maybe they'll make those small changes or a big enough change and they'll win. Like Chris Drury could be an example in New York, for example, right? Jeff Gorton was there for as long as he was. The ownership got fed up. Chris Drury comes in, he makes the team tougher. They're in the second round of the playoffs right now. There are other teams I think you can look at as well. I mean, Brian Burt comes in Anaheim at a pretty convenient time and helps the Anaheim Ducks get over the top where they need to go to win the Stanley Cup. But that wasn't necessarily a team that he built from the ground up.
But to me, that summer is next summer in Toronto. Like if they don't take steps forward, if you don't like where you're at a year from now, I think you look at it then, because at that point, Austin Matthews got a huge organizational decision looming on him. I would give Dubas one more year. That's just my view. I think most GMs should get at least 5 years in the seat before you can truly judge them. And so I would say this of people running other teams too. This isn't just a Kyle Dubas view, but I honestly find it hard for anyone to say he hasn't done a good job with what he's had. Now they haven't got over the top. You might say they need a little more toughness. They might need more of this, but he's tried just about everything. And to me has shown a willingness to evolve his approach to team building, right? Like there was the year he gets Joe Thornton and tries to load up with some older guys. I think they saw that didn't work. This year, if you look at their additions, they're largely in sort of the age band, like 20 to 30, like Lyubushkin. And they brought in guys, Bunting, Kasha, those guys are all 25, 26 years old. I think that they're trying everything, and it's hard. Again, all they're doing is they're falling one game short in the playoffs. Like, it's not like they sucked all year. If they sucked all year, I would be like, okay, it's time. Like, this is a management group and a coaching staff that can't find answers. I would say there's evidence that they're finding answers. They just haven't led to the big breakthrough that most people are waiting for. And so, I'm reading all the hot take columns. I've been listening to some local radio here. Like, I get it. It's so easy right now to be like, well, if you don't win, well, then you got to win and you got to do stuff and you got to break everything apart. And I get that that's sort of like old school media. Like, that's the way it always was. It's like, it's either black or it's white, and there's nothing you can't even consider.
No in between.
You can't even consider that they might actually be on the right path just because they lost one extra game, or they didn't get a good call, or whatever. I'm not making excuses for them. I'm just looking at this logically, and logic goes out the window with sports sometimes. But they won a shit ton of games. They played the Lightning that close. They still have some of the best players in the league in their primes. I just think it makes sense to run it back with a lot of those guys and change around the fringes. Look, they have some decisions to make too, Julian. Like, a guy like Jake Muzzin, I think, is a decision only because of his age. He makes $5.6 million. So if they were willing to move off that contract, that would be a way to maybe, spread some resources around in their other depth positions. And, they have other left shot defensemen, right? Morgan Riley's locked in long-term. You've got Rasmus Sandin, I think, ready for a bigger role. Mark Giordano was very clear, at least to my ears, that he wants to stay here. Like, that could be your three left shots in a world where you remove Muzzin from the equation. And look, they love Jake Muzzin. So that would be behind the scenes. Like, that maybe wouldn't get a big headline across the country, although it's the Leafs, so everything gets a big headline across the country. But if they were to say trade him, that would make a big change in the locker room, because I know he's tremendously popular. Right? That would not be a decision they would reach easily. And it's not one I'm going to say they're definitely going to reach either. But it's at least a possibility. I think it's something that they should consider. And so there's still going to be ways to change this team, I think, in a meaningful way that don't involve getting rid of like the guys that all scored 80 to 107 points, and that don't involve firing a GM and a head coach that have won a whole ton of more games in this league than most of their peers over the last 4 seasons. That's
fair. But I also kind of like the narrative of Kyle Dubas following in Masai Ujiri's footsteps. Masai Ujiri, by the way, not even the general manager of the Toronto Raptors, but still gets seen as the guy who, executes those big deals. I think also of Alex Anthopoulos, if you want to go a couple of years even further back, a guy who realized the Jays were not making the play, had gone through all these losing years with the Jays and said, you know what, we're going to make a run of it this year. And he gave Jays fans, at least in the last decade plus, some of the best years with those ALCS runs.
Well, and let me make a reference for the olds out there, because I know this will predate your time. But, when I was a kid, the Blue Jays broke my heart every single year. 85, 86, 87, 88, 89, 90, 91. They were always one of the best teams. They were in the playoffs multiple times in those years. 88, they spit the bit. 87 in the last week of the regular season, they should have made the playoffs. It looked like they were never going to get it done. And Pat Gillick made a huge trade for Roberto Alomar that changed the franchise. And he gave up at the time Tony Fernandez, who might have been the best shortstop in baseball at the time, not named Cal Ripken, and Fred McGriff, tremendously popular players. And Alomar, of course, became a baseball Hall of Famer and was one of the real drivers of their 2 World Series wins. I mean, there are a lot of examples of that through time. And I think there's some misunderstandings in a sense about Kyle Dubas. Like, he is a nice guy. I think he's very humane. I think he deals with players in a way, it's probably some of it's just age related. Like, he's less old school because he's not old. So he has a different way of approaching things. But he's as competitive as anyone. And, talking to those that have worked with him, he can be hard on people too. And so I think he's got it in him to do something. Like, I don't think he's just going to take the nice way or whatever. Like, I think that there's still a chance he does something dramatic here. And the other thing I'd point out to you as well is, we might be seeing it already. Like, Kyle Dubas goes way back with Jack Campbell. Like, I'm talking somewhere in the neighborhood of 15 years, maybe not quite that much, like 13, 14 years. Like, they've known each other a long, long time. And if you know Jack Campbell, you love Jack Campbell. Like, that's just a fact. You probably could sense that even from afar, the way his teammates gravitate towards him. On the media day, this kind of went under the radar a little bit because there's so much to talk about. Someone said, is it a priority to sign Jack Campbell, someone you've known for a long time after the season he had? And he said, I've known Jack a long time. I just see him like Ilya Mikheyev and Mark Giordano and Ilya Buchkin and all the other players. And like, he basically said it's not a priority in a roundabout way, or that he's no more important than any of our players who might walk. It basically depends on how much money he wants to make. Again, from afar, you might think that's not a big change, but like, that's the Leafs starting goalie this year. And there's big questions. Like, what do they do next if they move on from Campbell? I thought, look, it might've just been a hard line in the sand, almost just like, knowing that Jack Campbell and his agent are going to see that quote. Maybe they're like, ooh, maybe they're actually willing to walk away. Like, it might be part of the larger negotiation that's going on, but that would be a sign, for example, of it's not exactly trading DeMar DeRozan for Kawhi, but if they let Jack Campbell walk, I would say that's a relatively big surprise, because Jack Campbell is beloved by his teammates. You heard the Sioux chants at Scotiabank Arena. And again, because there's a long personal history there, Kyle Dubas knew him before either was in the OHL. Then he trades for him when he's with the Sault Ste. Marie Greyhounds, trades for him with the Maple Leafs from LA back in February 2020. If he just lets him walk, I think we might see some. That's what I mean. Even Jake Muzzin, like if that would be another example where that's someone that they love, where there's a long history. He might have to make a difficult decision with some of these guys, or multiple ones, and that might sort of reshape the way things look for the organization as well.
By the way, now's a good time to plug your latest with North Star Bets, why sentiment won't factor in Jack Campbell's Maple Leafs future, which you can read online. And you do go into all of this. I still can't believe I guess considering how his career has gone, it does explain why his career earnings have been essentially under 10 mil. But I can't imagine a scenario where he doesn't ask for plenty money, whether it's from the Leafs or anyone else.
Well, look, Jack Campbell was an 11th overall draft pick 12 years ago. And really, this was actually the first of the 12 years since that time where he was played more than half his team's games in the NHL. And frankly, for like 7 of those years, he was basically stuck in the American Hockey League, went down to the ECHL for a time, looked like a bust, frankly. We don't see goalies get chosen as high as 11th overall too often. And so when they do, Jack Campbell won everything for Team USA as a teenager. It was like the under 18s, the under 17s, the World Juniors. Like, this guy was a can't miss prospect. Took him a long time to get here. And so as a result of that, yes, like relative to his peers, he's not made a lot of money. And he's in a great spot right now. The last 2 seasons, he has the 10th best save percentage in the league among goaltenders, 11th in wins. Basically any of these, some of the more underlying statistics for goaltending, but like goals saved above expected, he's in about that range, roughly 10th to 15th in the league. Basically, I would argue then a top half for the last 2 seasons anyway, NHL starter. And look, there might be age questions related to him because he's 30. There could be some durability questions in there. He's had some injuries. I'm not saying it's a slam dunk that teams are going to line up at his door on July 13th when free agency opens. But, if you look at, there's 4 goalies that I can identify that signed for $5 million and above that I think he's got reasonable comparisons to. Cal Peterson in LA got $5 million. Linus Ullmark, when he went to Boston in free agency last year, got $5 million on a 4-year deal. $5 million went to UC Saros. Probably in hindsight, UC could have probably pushed for more. I think he's above this tier of the goalies I'm mentioning. And Elvis Merzlikins got $5.4 million from Columbus on his extension. And so, if you look at the career numbers to the points where those guys started those games, again, sort of removing Saros from the group, I think that Jack Campbell's got a case to ask for $5 million minimum. And I don't know if the Leafs can pay him that. Certainly, unless they're able to unload Peter Mrazek's contract, it's hard to imagine them signing him for that kind of money. So, this looks like it could be headed towards a divorce. But the one asterisk I'll put there is that I think this is also a summer where the Leafs are going to be looking at a multitude of changes. And so maybe long before it gets to the free agency day, they've shed some salary or made some other moves that make this easier to stomach. But as it stands right now, like Jack Campbell was speaking to Toronto media on Tuesday, and he's like, I just can't wait to see what the team looks like next season and how I can get better. I love being a Leaf. I love Toronto. It's like, man, the way it's looking right now, it doesn't appear to me like it's headed for him staying here unless, again, there's some kind of larger change that we don't know yet know about.
And there are goalies who will be available on the unrestricted free agent market this summer, guys. Marc-Andre Fleury could be a possibility. I'd be surprised if Darcy Kemper ends up leaving from Colorado, but Ville Husso out in St. Louis, I'd also be surprised with that too. But with the way Jordan Binnington, Braden Holtby as well, Martin Jones.
Georgiev.
Yeah, there are options for many a team like the Toronto Maple Leafs to take advantage of. Yaroslav Halak is probably not going to be back in Vancouver as well. Yeah, there are options for guys to, move from address to address and for teams to solidify their goaltender.
And it's such a roll of the dice. Like I look at like Carolina did last summer, right? They brought in 2 new goalies, Frederik Andersen, Antti Ranta. They had a great season, and most of it was with Frederik Andersen in net. He gets injured. Now here they are in the playoffs. Antti Ranta is playing the big games. I would say, at least to this point, it's worked out. But, Rod Brind'Amour, I remember him speaking during the All-Star weekend in Vegas, was saying like he was nervous about that heading into the year. Just as a coach, you have a team that's been really good to great, even frankly, the last couple seasons. But you go in with 2 new goalies, you just don't know how that's going to go. And there is a world here where the Leafs trade Mrazek and maybe still aren't able to re-sign Campbell or choose not to re-sign Campbell. They could be bringing in 2 new goalies with a team, again, that they think is very good, that they've shown themselves to be very good. But you just don't know with goalies, man. That old goalies are voodoo thing is I think it's real. And, it's such a huge summer for Toronto. I mean, it goes without saying in a sense, but like this really could be the last dance if it doesn't go well. Now, flip side is maybe this season goes awesome. Maybe they don't win a cup, but they win a couple playoff rounds. They re-sign Matthews, and then there's many, many more dances. But this is like the last guaranteed dance is maybe the best way to put it. And so there's huge stakes riding on the decisions that get made.
Man, we're throwing around the Last Dance label a lot since that documentary. That documentary
I love that
us.
doc, man.
Me too.
I should rewatch it. I only watched it at the start of the pandemic, like when it was live is the only time I essentially watched it.
That was literally all we had. Like every year we're going to bring that up now. That's just going to be like a callback to a time when there was no like original sports programming on other than that. Like it was wild.
Do you remember that they closed golf courses in Ontario?
Well, they closed them in Quebec too. I mean, everything was closed.
Like, I think we're going to look back and be like, somehow they closed golf courses. Like that was the answer.
I think actually it got to a point, I think, when Quebec slowly started opening things up, golf might have been one of the few things people could do, if I recall correctly.
In Toronto, they chained up the basketball nets in the public courts. Like they put zip ties through or whatever. So like you couldn't shoot on the hoop. Like they took the nets down from the tennis courts. Like
Yeah, anyway, there's a lot
I'm
stuff.
just saying, like, the one thing we should have been telling people is obviously keep your distance. I get why you can't go to bars and restaurants. Like, I understand that. No one's vaccinated. We don't know but like prioritizing some physical health probably isn't the worst thing that we all could have been doing anyway.
Yeah, anyway.
Strange time. I don't want to go into that part, like open that part of my brain. It's like, it's a rock I don't want to look under again.
I have another documentary recommendation since we did mention the Blue Jays. I don't know if you watch stuff on SB Nation a lot.
No, but I will.
Meet Dave, Captain Ahab, the story of Dave Stieb. I'm a big fan of John Boyce and some of the content that he does. And he does this entire look back, I think with, I think Alex Rubenstein is his name. They do a look back of Dave Stieb's career, of how he goes from this journeyman who has never pitched in the minors, who ends up turning into the Blue Jays ace. There's like 4 or 5 parts in the series. It's worth your time to kind of go through whenever you have time.
I would love it. Thanks for the reco. And honestly, Dave Stieb, the only Jays pitcher to throw a no-hitter still to this day, which is actually pretty mind-boggling given the pitchers they've had and how long the organization's been around for. So he was a menace back in the day.
Yeah, and they go in on all of his like near misses with the no-hitters too, because that's also marked his career. I
actually saw something of this. His daughter was tweeting about that documentary and like said she showed it to her dad and stuff. So I should look it up.
Actually, like, not to go too much into it, but like the way it starts is, I think they start from a game where Roy Halladay's pitching and he's on the verge of getting a no-hitter, and then it's ruined essentially by a home run that goes into the dugout. I think goes off part of the dugout and into Dave Stieb's hands.
Oh, do you know what's funny? If I'm not mistaken, that might have been Roy Halladay's first career start or second career start.
Trying to remember. It was early in his career, yes.
And the reason it was supposed to be Roger Clemens' start like the last day of the season, but they just didn't bother pitching him because it didn't matter. And against the Tigers. I actually remember that game. I'm a weirdo. I love the Blue Jays. Like they've been one of my lifelong loves. It's like the Blue Jays, Tiger Woods, peanut butter,
Peanut butter. Okay. We never really went into your peanut butter.
Well, I'm just saying it's like one of the few things I loved when I was like 6 years old that I still love today. I mean, I don't eat a ton of peanut butter, but I still appreciate peanut butter. Most of your tastes evolve, Julian, but some tastes don't. Is all I'm saying. Like that's one of the ones that stuck with me.
We also, at some point, either this summer or whenever, we need to take in a Jays game together.
In, brother. In.
Let's do it. We all feel better with the confidence that comes from great grooming. Personal grooming is, well, personal. But whatever your personal style, waxing gives you an endless amount of choices so you can keep your skin looking smooth and healthy. European Wax Center, they are the experts in waxing for everyone. They help you feel like your best inside and out. No matter what kind of wax you're looking for, their wax specialists have you covered. Whether you want your back, your shoulders, legs, your nose, even your eyebrows, you can get groomed by the experts at the European Wax Center. They offer personalized consultations so you can find the wax that works for you. When you first start a waxing routine, it can be a little intimidating, but the more you go, the more comfortable it is. The pros at the European Wax Center can help you start and stick to that routine. They are also committed to keeping you safe while they keep you smooth, with enhanced hygiene measures for an added level of confidence and care. With so many convenient locations, your local European Wax Center is always easy to get to. Their online booking system makes getting your reservation simple and straightforward. You can also use the EWC app to book your waxing service. European Wax Center. Well-groomed is wax-groomed. Ready to try it? European Wax Center is so confident you'll love your experience. Your very first wax is free on the house. Book your free wax today at waxcenter.com. Sounds like a good idea. This podcast is sponsored by HelloFresh. With HelloFresh, you get farm-fresh, pre-portioned ingredients and seasonal recipes delivered right to your doorstep. You can just skip all those trips to the grocery store and count on HelloFresh to make home cooking easy, fun, and affordable. That is exactly why it is America's #1 meal kit. I'm not kidding about the cheaper stuff here. It is 72% cheaper than dining at a restaurant and is even cheaper than grocery shopping. That's money in your back pocket. Their newest menu release includes Mediterranean recipes that are filled with fresh fruits and veggies, nuts, olive oil, fiber-packed whole grains for nourishing balance. They have some really, really healthy stuff. And right now, if you go to HelloFresh.com/Johnston16, Johnston16, you can get up to 16 free meals and 3 free gifts. HelloFresh.com/Johnston16, and you can get 16 free meals and 3 free gifts. HelloFresh, America's #1 meal kit. With spring in the air, it's a time of renewal and growth, personally and professionally. As your small business grows, LinkedIn Jobs is here to make it easier to find the people you want to talk to faster and for free. Create a free job post in minutes on LinkedIn Jobs to reach your network and beyond, the world's largest professional network of over 810 million people. Then add your job and the purple #hiring frame to your LinkedIn profile to spread the word that you're hiring, so your network can help you find the right people to hire. Seems pretty simple. It's a lot of simple tools, to be honest with you, like screening questions, and they make it easy to focus on candidates with just the right skills and experience so you can quickly prioritize who you'd like to interview and hire. It's why small businesses rate LinkedIn Jobs #1 in delivering quality hires versus leading competitors. LinkedIn Jobs, they help you find the candidates you want to talk to faster. Nearly 40 million job seekers visit LinkedIn. That is a lot of people looking for jobs. By the way, you can post your job for free at linkedin.com/Johnston. LinkedIn.com/Johnston to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. People, it's Julian here with a message from Athletic Greens. Right now, it's time to reclaim your health and arm your immune system with convenient and daily nutrition, especially heading into the flu and cold season. It's not a fun time. In just one scoop in a cup of water every day, that's it. That's literally it. That's amazing. No need for a million different other pills and supplements and all that extra stuff. Athletic Greens is it. To make it easy, Athletic Greens will give you a free 1-year supply of immune-supporting vitamin D and 5 free travel packs with your very first purchase. All you have to do, visit athleticgreens.com/Johnston. It's CJ's last name. Like, how easy? It doesn't get any easier than that. athleticgreens.com/Johnston to take ownership over your health and pick up the ultimate daily nutritional insurance. All right, so that does it for Leafs Corner. That satisfies the particular fan base who loves the Leafs. There were some coaching news and notes that happened earlier this week that we did not get to in the last episode. Sure. Pete DeBoer standing out as the biggest of all of them. He is no longer the head coach of the Vegas Golden Knights. I did a podcast with Ian Mendez earlier this week for the Athletic Hockey Show, and this question kind of came up with regards to him. Has he gotten this label of a coach who can get a team to the playoffs, but not necessarily the guy you need to take you over the top and win the Stanley Cup, even though he's been to a Stanley Cup final before?
Well, he's been to 2, and the New Jersey team he took there in 2012, I think it was. Like that team, I shouldn't say that, not that they had no business being there, but like the fact they were there was an achievement. And ultimately lost to the Kings in that series. I think with San Jose too, he took San Jose farther than that organization's ever been. And they had so many great teams over the years, so much regular season success. Even with Vegas, isn't it 2 conference finals? Sort of Barry Trotz like feeling, this just underlines how difficult the business is. I think the coaches often get the short end of the stick. You might, and I don't just mean you, pejoratively, all of us might look at that record and say, oh, you can't get your team over the top. I look at that record and say, like, man, this guy's a good coach who consistently gets teams really deep. It would be hard for me to look at what happened with the Golden Knights this season and pin it on coaching. I don't know how well that roster was managed, quite frankly. Obviously, there's injuries, which, every team, you're going to have some off years with that stuff. It's almost nobody's fault. It's just sort of the luck of the draw or bad luck of the draw. And I would think that Pete DeBoer, sounds like he's maybe not necessarily in a rush to go coach somewhere else. I would think we're going to see him coach somewhere else because he's always got results wherever he's been, and he's a good coach. And so I would think in Vegas, they're going to go with someone pretty experienced. Doesn't seem to me like this is a job for the next up and comer. They're not looking for sort of the Sheldon Keefe model, for example, that Toronto's gone for. I wonder about Joel Quenneville. I've heard some sort of like, could John Tortorella go there? Barry Trotz makes some sense. I think you're going to see them go with a veteran hire. The biggest issue still with Quenneville is it's not clear if he's able to take a job in the NHL if a team wants to hire him. It's a bit murky on that front. But I think that there could be a strong fit there if he is, if the league does deem him able to coach. And man, we're dealing with this all kinds of openings everywhere, right? Barry Trotz has already interviewed in Winnipeg. I think that there's high interest from the Jets end of things to bring a Manitoba boy home. Barry's from Dauphin, Manitoba, and obviously bring in an experienced coach. They're at sort of a crossroads, it would appear, with their core. I know we talked a bit about it after their locker cleanout, but I would expect a sizable move to come to that core this offseason and bringing in that kind of coach. The one thing the Jets have not consistently been able to do, this dates back to even Paul Maurice's time, is defend well. It seems like a lot of their good results were driven by, having an elite offensive team for stretches of time. And then obviously Connor Hellebuyck has been one of the better goalies in the league. And so when you've matched those two things together, well, that's worked, but it hasn't been sustainable because of their defensive play. Well, what's Barry Trotz done? He's been a pretty good defensive coach. His Nashville teams, had that sort of vibe around them. I know in Washington, it was more finding a way to keep the Stars happy and get them play that way. And then obviously the Islanders bought into that. And so I love the fit there. I don't know if Barry Trotz, he's a guy with a lot of options. I'm not sure if that's the job he'll jump at, but the fact he took an interview at least says that it's possible. And that the chairs keep cycling. John Hines got extended by a year in Nashville, so he's got 2 years left on his deal from now. That was kind of up in the air what they would do. Who else is looking for a coach? It feels like everybody's looking for a coach right now.
It does kind of feel that way.
I haven't mentioned Dallas, right? I think Rick Bowness, it sounds like
Bowness
likely to retire or move aside, I think, on his own doing. So there's a pile of jobs out there. We haven't yet heard back from what's going to happen in Chicago, where Derek King was an interim coach. I mean, this has been a meat grinder of a year for those working in sort of front-facing hockey positions. There's just been a lot of turnover at the GM and coach level.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting on some of the interim jobs, like Derek King, Martin St. Louis. At least those two guys come to mind in terms of guys on interim deals who have not necessarily been resolved yet. If they're going to, in Montreal, all signs are pointing for Martin St. Louis to come back, but maybe he just wants some time off just to not deal with it. And Kent Hughes is probably at the World Championships, so maybe that's why it's taking so long. But it is interesting that has not been resolved yet.
Well, and they have to sign a contract. Martin St. Louis is the rare coach who's coached as few games in the NHL as he has. It's got to be less than 50, right? Who I would argue has some leverage. He showed results there. He showed you enough to believe this could be a great longer term fit. And, we've been through it on this podcast, but, the whole bilingual coaching issue, like he ticks that box, but he's sort of fresh blood in that space. Plus, let's face it, he's made a lot of money in his career. Like, he doesn't have to do this. He does have a young family. Like, he's got the family considerations. I'm sure all things being equal, he'd love to continue being coach of the team, but he's not going to do it at a discount, I wouldn't expect. And so that's a unique negotiation, and you got to sign him to a contract. I would think July 7th, that's the day of the first round of the draft, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes.
You're going to want him. You're going to want him in the fold full time by that point in time if you're Montreal. And so, yeah, it's not necessarily a rush, but we're mid-May to getting towards late May here. That they got to get that piece of business done here in the next 6 weeks or so.
Lane Lambert, we can't forget about him. He succeeds Barry Trotz on the island, and I think Barry Trotz is happy about it. Lane Lambert's been a part of his staffs almost everywhere he's been.
Back to Nashville, yeah, and I mentioned that when we did the emergency pod when I was in the Tampa airport, that when we were trying to unpack why the Islanders would let go of Barry Trotz, I think one of the factors there was that Lane Lambert was garnering interest from other teams. I think he's someone Detroit would have looked at for its opening. I think the Winnipeg Jets would have had some interest in Lane Lambert, and possibly some of these others openings that we're talking about as well. And so, if you're the Islanders and you feel like you have the next guy you want anyway, right there, you had to act in that moment because all signs are starting to point to him getting a job as a head coach somewhere else, and therefore you'd be losing him off your bench.
Okay. So that's pretty much it for the coaching roundup. We were able to get through that pretty efficiently. So I think all we have left is stick taps. Do you have a stick tap? Do you have anyone who is deserving of some love this week?
I was hoping
I know who my pick is. Okay. Because I was just going to give it to Brady Tkachuk for supporting his brother. I think that's enough. Yeah, I think that's cool. I genuinely think it's cool. And the way he's going about it is like really fun. Also, a honorable mention to Keith Tkachuk for holding on to his hat after his son scored a hat trick goal. I'm not crazy about throwing your hat onto the ice when a hat trick is scored. If you have a nice looking hat like the one you're wearing from North Standard,
no chance I'd be throwing this on the ice for a hat trick.
You know what I'm saying? Like, honorable mention, but Brady Tkachuk, I will give him a stick tap for being out here with his brother and supporting his brother. Wearing the neutral T-shirt with Matthew on it, and showing out. That's a really cool thing. So I'm gonna give him my stick tap.
All right, my stick tap goes to the beer salesman at the Scotiabank Saddle Dome who has been keeping Brady Tkachuk well hydrated during these games. I know that's a tough job, but someone out there is doing great work behind the scenes and giving us all lots of reasons to smile. So stick tap to you, good sir.
Yes, sir. Yeah, but 2 beers in the back pocket, man.
I didn't even notice that. Like when I first saw the clip last night, like in real time during the game, I know it like I was enjoying it. And then when my brother-in-law sent it to me this morning, I actually noticed the beers in the back pocket. I'm like, wow, he's packing heat.
In the back.
I don't know if they still do this at the Saddle Dome, but they do in the playoffs. But in the regular season, they have like a happy hour leading up to the game for beers. And so like if you get in there early enough, the beers are half price because they want you to arrive early. So Maybe Brady stocked up on some half-price beers, and that's why he had them all in every pocket.
To be clear, he's talking about beer and not some of that flora and fauna stuff that real OGs of this podcast would know about. Anyway, that's going to do it.
My buddy Brandon wasn't with him, so I know he was okay.
No, thank God. Thank God. They weren't tripping on some funny stuff. All right, we've done enough. CJ, a pleasure doing these episodes always. 70th episode of the podcast. Look at us.
This is is it Braden Holtby number 70? This is our Braden Holtby episode.
Yeah, this is the Braden Holtby episode. I like that.
We've got Evgeny Malkin on tap on Monday, so you better bring your heat.
Oh, and if we're gonna talk, if 71 is that, then maybe we got to start talking about the Pittsburgh Penguins a little bit more on this podcast. They have a lot of decisions to consider this offseason.
I love that.
I love that too. All right. Thank you so much for listening. Thank you so much for watching on YouTube. If that is your way of watching these podcasts, subscribe to our show wherever you listen to podcasts. Subscribe to the SDPN YouTube channel. Subscribe to the Discord, sdpn.ca. You can find the Discord link there. All the podcasts on the SDPN. Shout out to everyone hosting Game Over Calgary. That's going to get a lot of play with the Battle of Alberta in full swing. So you be sure to check that out on the SDPN YouTube page after every Calgary Flames game. That's enough housekeeping. For Siege, I'm Julian. So long. Peace. We'll see you all.
May 2-4 if you're in Canada, guys. Be safe.
Yes, be safe.
The Chris Johnston Show.
Powered by Sports Interaction, Canada's sportsbook.
Inside the Game, twice a week. Follow Chris on Twitter @ReporterChris. And follow Julian McKenzie @JKMcKenzie.
The Chris Johnston Show.